All those numbers.
Good day everyone, this is Nemesis, and at long last the time has come for me to remake the conditionmancer as well, due to the recent game modifications.
Yeah.
So if you want to be able to do what you've just seen in the introduction, there are some steps that we need to go through. So in this video we are going to go through a build overview, then the weapons, utilities, traits, gear and stats, build damage rotation and playstyle, math and statistics behind the build, a demonstration of the overall build's capabilities, and some final notes. Feel free to come back to this table of content in the beginning at any time during the video and choose a different area of interest. Before we get to the build overview, there are a few principles of build creation that I go by. Never invest in anything you don't use, and never choose to take an advantage for yourself at the cost of your team's disadvantage. So the build overview. This build is a conditionmancer, a condition type build. So that means this is an offensive build, a damaging build whose main source of damage is condition. I will tell you up front that this means we will be focusing on AoE type damage, sustained AoE type damage. I have said many times before in the past that there is no best damage build, only best at. This build is best at using AoE sustained type damage. This is what it was designed to do. So I know from experience, like I always said, I know what people keep asking for months, for almost a year now. I know what people have been asking. What is the best damaging build? What is the best build out of all of it? And can I have one build that can do high single target, high AoE, be a tank, be a healer, and I can use it in World v World, PvP and PvE? There is no such thing. There is no best damage build, there is no best build, only best at. This is a build that is best at AoE, sustained type damage, and is designed to fight monsters. Is designed for PvE content. Also you need to know that while the conditionmancer has a primary function as an AoE sustained type damage dealer, he also has a secondary function of support, and we will go through all of these one step at a time. So let's start at the beginning. In order to be a successful damage dealer, we need to have some weapons. So we are looking for weapons that do condition type damage, which means the weapon has to apply a condition that does an X amount of damage over a period of time. So we take a look at the scepter and we see bleeding. Second skill, bleeding and cripple. Third skill, damaged based per condition. So as you can see, the scepter seems to be a good main hand weapon for your main weapon set, because it has bleeding and also has cripple. Cripple basically reduces the enemy movement speed, so you have the opportunity to kite, you have the opportunity to do damage while the enemy is unable to reach you. For the offhand weapon from the main set, we take a look at dagger, and we have unleash an insect swarm, blinding multiple foes, transfer 3 conditions to your target on successful attack. This is condition related weapon. So if we by any chance have any condition on ourselves, we get to transfer these conditions, up to 3 of them, back to the opponent. So this can be used as the defensive offensive ability. So this is really important, looking good so far. Second ability, inflict weakness and bleeding on foes in the target area. So bleeding and weakness, we have cripple and we have weakness. Basically with cripple and weakness on the target, you have really high chance of doing damage without being damaged too much in return. So we are sort of starting to see a pattern. The conditionmancer takes some time to apply the bleeds, and it requires to be involved in the fight for a longer period of time. So we have kiting tools and also more abilities that permit us to remain in combat for a longer period of time, but more about that later. One thing to note is that this is an AoE and this is an AoE, so we are slowly moving towards the path of a sustained AoE type damage dealer. Moving on to our second weapon set, we are going to take a look at the staff. This is power type damage, builds up life force, and is a combo finisher. This doesn't look too good. Regeneration and bleeding. This is an AoE, has 6-second cooldown, so far this seems to be a good choice for us because it further increases the effectiveness of our desired playstyle. Basically, by obtaining regeneration, we move further down the path of being survivable, so we can stay longer in combat, so we take full benefit from the bleed that will be basically placed on many opponents. We know that this is an AoE, this is an AoE, so we need to be survivable so that the bleeds will reach their full damage on the target, and of course also bleeding, further bleeding. Chill, poison, and a bit of damage. It's also a combo field poison. So poison and chill. Chill goes really well with cripple. Between cripple and chill, the opponents will almost always be slowed, and they can't really easily get to you. So poison, poison, poison. Do we have more poison? Yes, we do. The first skill on the scepter is basically a 3-chain attack. We have bleeding, bleeding, and poison at the end. So between this poison and this poison, we can basically keep poison on the opponent at all times, which not only does damage but reduces the heal effectiveness of the opponent. We also have chill, cripple, and weakness. So far as you can see, the game is giving us the tools, so we are a successful combatant. We are able to remain in the fight for a longer period of time, so that the bleeding, which basically is damage over time, so basically you get to fully benefit from your bleeding effects. Putrid Mark. Inscribe a mark that transfers condition from allies to foes when triggered. This works with yourself as well, so if you have some conditions on yourself, you transfer them back. So remember what I said about the dagger offhand and putrid mark. It's basically more or less the same thing. I will get to more details in the future, but basically it reduces your own vulnerability to condition type attacks by transforming them into an offensive ability. You give the conditions back to your opponent. And last is AoE fear. Reaper's Mark. Inscribe a mark that causes fear when foes trigger it. On top of all the kiting capabilities you have with cripple, chill, you're not vulnerable to conditions because of Deathly Swarm and Putrid Mark. Now you have the ability, if the monsters go even through all of those, you have the opportunity to buy yourself some time with Reaper's Mark. So everything we've learned so far seems to point us in the direction of an AoE damage dealer that is also highly survivable. Moving on to utilities, also known as slot skills. So our first utility, our heal, is Consume Condition. Feast on your conditions, gain health for each one consumed. So far we have one anti-condition skill from Consume Conditions. We have Deathly Swarm, which is an anti-condition, and we have Putrid Mark, which is another anti-condition. So 3 ways in which to be survivable, to be able to counter condition type damage that is done to the character. We are going to take a look at Blood is Power. Bleed yourself to gain might and bleed your target. The bleeding, as you can see, lasts for 48 seconds, and the skill is on a 24-second cooldown. So basically we will more or less be able to apply it twice, to stack 4 stacks of bleeding on the target at all times, and as you can see, the damage is huge, the damage is insane. This of course also gives you might, which basically gives 335 power and 335 condition damage. We also apply self-bleeding, which is not really a problem. This self-bleeding you can turn into a weapon with Deathly Swarms or with Putrid Mark, or you can use it to further increase your defensive capabilities by healing extra for every condition that you have on you. Second skill, Epidemic. This is the most important skill that the conditionmancer has. This applies vulnerability on yourself and spread the conditions on a target foe to all nearby foes. The vulnerability is not an issue. Like in the case of Bloody Spour, we can use the vulnerability offensively by giving it to the opponent with Deathly Swarm or Putrid Mark, or we can use it defensively by increasing our heal because we have condition on ourselves. This spell is extremely important. I will go into a lot of detail on this because this spell is highly misunderstood by players, and I will demonstrate why it is the most important spell in the conditionmancer build and why it does all the difference in the world. So in a conditionmancer build, try to never leave home without Bloody Spour or Epidemic. The first utility I left for last, and standardly I use Well of Darkness, but there are a lot of situations in which Well of Darkness is not really needed. Another support type spell can be used instead, but more about that when we reach the build damage rotation and playstyle. Plague Form. We further improve the effectiveness of our desired playstyle, become a virulent cloud and inflict multiple conditions on foes you touch. Entering this form destroys all minions and removes spectral effects. Well, it applies poison. It also increases your HP tremendously. It benefits from toughness. It's let me just demonstrate for a second. 33,000 HP, and you can spam poison and blindness, bleeding and poison, cripple poison and weakness, and these, as you can see, you can spam them all day long. So this is basically the ultimate survivability tool that the conditionmancer has. Alternatively, you can use the Flesh Golem if you ever find yourself in a position where you have to take down buildings or other structures. Okay, moving on to the traits. So for a condition type damage dealer, we require condition damage and condition duration. Basically these are the two major components that will increase your condition damage. The condition damage stat will increase the raw power of your condition, and the condition duration and bleeding duration will increase the time that the condition stays on the target. So I'm going to put this in simple terms. If you have 1000 condition damage and 0 condition duration, and you have a skill that does 2000 damage as a result of your 1000 condition damage stat, if you have 100% condition duration, your skill will no longer do 2000 damage, it will do 4000 damage over double the period of time it stays on the target. So that means your DPS will not be higher, but your overall damage will be higher. You still do the same amount of damage per second, but you do that damage over a longer period of time. Therefore, your overall damage is higher. The actual DPS increase is from stacking. So what do you mean by stacking? Well, a very important piece of information is that bleeds do not have the ability to perform a critical strike. So bleeds don't crit, but they do stack in intensity. So you can have up to 25 stacks of bleeding on the target. So how do you get those stacks? How do you get so high? Well, the fact is that this lasts 6 seconds, 6 seconds, 4 seconds. So by auto attacking with this, it's really hard to get to 25 stacks. But if these were to last longer on the target, that means by the time you cast your 11th or 12th bleed on the target, the initial bleed has not yet expired, so therefore you can stack them on top of each other. So basically, the longer the initial condition stays on the target, the more chance you have to apply further conditions on top of the initial conditions, so you stack and your damage grows exponentially. So this will actually increase your DPS, damage per second. Your overall damage is still determined by the final damage that you will do when all the bleeds expire, but your DPS will increase. So we are going to be looking for condition damage stat, power, and condition duration. Condition duration is useful for us, but power really isn't. We don't need power to do damage with a condition type build. Move on down, we have precision and condition damage. We have condition damage, but we also have precision. Precision is the equivalent to critical strike chance, and we know bleeds don't have the capabilities of performing a critical hit. So why do we have critical strike chance teamed up with condition damage? The answer to this question is in the first minor trait. Critical hits have 66 chance to cause bleeding. Basically, if you remember what I just said, you have the opportunity to stack more bleeding on the target faster just because you are critting. And you know that each time you stack more bleeds, your DPS goes higher. The faster you put bleeds on the target, the higher your DPS, and also the faster you reach to the cap of 25 bleeds on the target, which basically caps your DPS, and you reach the maximum potential for doing highest overall damage over time. So precision is useful in a condition type build, and condition damage is useful. So we are going to go into curses. Bard precision. Critical hits have a 66 chance to cause bleeding. This is an amazing minor trait. With the help of this minor trait and some runes, we will have the ability to reach 25 stacks of bleeding on the target on our own. So 20% increased bleeding duration. Bleeding duration is really important, and once I reach to the math and calculations, I will explain why bleeding duration is more important than condition damage. So hemophilia is a must when going into the conditionmancer. Gain fury for 5 seconds when entering death shot. Fury basically gives you 20% more critical strike chance, and it has small uses, this minor trait, but is more useful for the hybrid version of the damage dealing necromancer. But it's still useful, so you crit more often, so you apply more bleeds. It's not a bad minor trait. Corruption skills recharge 20% faster. We have Bloody Spar, which is corruption, and Epidemic, which is corruption. And I told you guys never to leave home without them, so the fact that they recharge 20% faster is actually a really useful thing. Target the weak, 2% increased damage for each condition on your foe. This is again more for the hybrid. It's not that useful since we don't do power type damage, direct damage, but still synergizes well with some skills like Fist of Corruption, damage per condition increased by 8%. It's still an increase in damage. It's an increase in damage no matter how you look at it. Lingering Curse. Condition inflicted by Scepter skills last 33% longer. This is one of the most important traits for the conditionmancer, because this trait not only gives us more bleeding duration for all the skills on the scepter, but also has the unique ability of going over the 100% bleeding duration cap. And I will leave an annotation somewhere around here to a video in which I have demonstrated that this trait actually breaks the 100% bleeding cap duration. So now that we have our condition damage and all our traits that are related to condition damage, all we need now is some condition duration, and all our damages, basically we finished with the damage part. We have our damage, nothing will increase our damage more. Not toughness, not wound duration, not vitality, not healing, not critical hit damage. or life force pool. None of these will increase our damage even more. We can go into condition duration, but we don't really need power. Since we will be getting the duration through other means, such as gear, we move on to the secondary role of the conditionmancer. The support side, the survivability and support side, so you can be in a fight versus multiple opponents for a longer period of time. So we take a look at toughness and boon duration. We have summon jagged horror when you kill a foe, gain toughness for each minion under your control. Toughness is given as bonus power, minion and power related traits. So if you take a look at all the traits, most of them are minion related or have vulnerability, lose a condition when you enter Death Shroud. Not really too beneficial, so we need to have something that we gain sustain in a PvE environment. If you take a look at the first minor trait from Blood Magic, gain 5 seconds of regeneration when your health reaches 90%. So regeneration, and we have regeneration from Mark of Blood, so it sort of tells us which way we should go. Also gives us vitality and healing. You're not going to be a healer, but healing is never something that you're not going to use in a build that is designed to remain in combat for a longer period of time. So, I already explained the first minor trait. So, Vampiric Precision, siphon health whenever you critical hit. We have the precision, so it's most likely that we are going to crit. So, if we siphon health every time we crit, then our survivability will go higher a bit. Moving on, siphon health whenever you hit a foe. So whenever we hit and whenever we crit, we siphon health. So our survivability will be even higher. Moving on, siphon health is 50% more effective. So basically whenever we hit and whenever we crit, we siphon health, which is 50% more effective. Once we reach the math and statistics behind the build, I will demonstrate just how much you can heal with this, and you will see just how high your sustained survivability will go from these traits. Moving on, 5% more damage while your health is above 90%. Extra damage is always useful in a damaging type build. The last trait is special. This particular trait is special because it's basically related to your first utility. Okay, this is not good. So if you are going to use a well, then you can take wells also siphon health every time they pulse. So every time the well pulses, it will siphon health just because it pulses. If it hits, it will siphon health because it hits, and if it crits, it will siphon health because it crits. So basically a well will siphon 3 times every time it does something, and if you are using it against 5 targets, then it will basically siphon health 15 times. It will siphon health 15 times, but more about that later. Due to various situations, you might want to use Spectral Grasp or Spectral Wall, and if you use Spectral Wall, you no longer have wells. So instead of that, you can choose something else that moves further into the support area. Life Transfer heals nearby enemies. So you get into Death Shroud, you use Life Transfer, and the fact that you have Fury will make you crit really often, and every time you crit you apply bleeding, and while you apply AoE bleeding you basically heal your party members. Or last but not least, the one that I use the most, leave a Mark of Blood when you dodge. Mark of Blood is basically this, so it will give regeneration every time I dodge and bleeding every time I dodge. So between this Mark of Blood, and the regeneration that we have from Full of Life, we basically will have 100% regeneration uptime and close to 100% AoE regeneration for our team. So as you can see, we are moving into the support, we are starting to fulfill our secondary role in a team. It's not just high survivability and high AoE damage, high sustained AoE damage, it also fills the secondary role of support. So right about now we will be leaving, we will have about 10 points left, and those 10 points go into condition duration. So gain health when you kill something, this effect can trigger only once every 5 seconds, and gain retaliation for 3 seconds when entering Death Shroud. Retaliation is quite, it's good, because it can work versus AoE. If a lot of mobs hit you, you go into Death Shroud, you damage them, you apply bleeds, if they hit you they take even more damage, and if you kill something you gain health. Until you gain the health from killing something, you have regeneration, 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 and siphon when you crit, siphon when you hit, and all the siphoning is 50% more effective. So now you finally understand how these things, the skills and the traits, sort of come together into something quite beautiful. But it's going to get even better. So now we move on to the gear. We have established so far that we need condition damage and condition duration. We also need to be quite survivable so we can stay in combat for a longer period of time, so that the bleeding damage can reach its full potential. So from the traits we know that we have vitality and healing power. Our precision and condition damage, precision is used for stacking bleeds, as I have explained, and we have the condition damage. So we need more survivability, more condition damage, and more condition duration. So we need something with condition damage, precision for more stacking, and condition duration. That gear would be the rabbit gear. Precision, toughness, and condition damage across the board. Everything is precision, toughness, and condition damage. Why toughness and not vitality? So let me explain like this. Let's say you have 20,000 HP, you can heal, like you've seen, for about 100 per second, and you get hit for 10,000. Versus you have 10,000 HP, you get hit for 5,000 and you heal the same amount. Which is better? Which is better? That's why you have toughness, because it doesn't matter how much HP you have, if you get hit really badly, you won't be able to compensate with the small amount of healing that you receive, which is basically sort of a passive healing, sort of a sustained type healing. So in order for that to be effective, you need to not get hit like a truck. So that's why the toughness is here. Vitality is really important when it comes to managing conditions, and this is another very important piece of information, that conditions go directly into health. They go through protection, through toughness, through everything. So basically what you see is what you get. So if you have a higher health pool, naturally you can manage conditions better. But as a necromancer, we don't really need to have high health to manage conditions, because we can turn them into an offensive weapon with Deathly Swarm, Putrid Mark, and we can heal extra because of the conditions. So we got that covered. So we need to mitigate direct damage. Precision, toughness, condition damage, precision, toughness, condition damage. Everything is precision, toughness, and condition damage. Accessories, ascended, precision, toughness, condition damage. Absolutely everything is the rabbit stat gear. Now that we have increased our toughness, our condition damage, and our precision, so that we reach 53% critical strike chance, all that is left is to go higher with condition duration, so that we are able to reach 25 stacks of bleeding on our own. 25 stacks of bleeding on the target is the maximum stacks of bleeding that you can have on the target, and in order to reach 25 stacks of bleeding you need around 50% critical strike chance and 133% bleeding duration. So how do we do that? Well, So far we have 20 bleeding duration and another 33, and this 33 comes from lingering curse, which is a major trait that can break the 100% bleeding cap, and I will leave an annotation so you can follow the demonstration of this fact in another video. But before lingering curse we need to get to 100%. We have 15 bleeding duration from 3 superior rune of the afflicted and 15 bleeding duration from 3 superior runes of the crate, alongside 83 condition damage from the crate and 83 condition damage from the afflicted. So this in total gives us 30% with 10% from spite and 20% from hemophilia. That puts us at 60% bleeding duration. So how can we improve that even further? This 40% condition duration and 70 condition damage full. This is no longer available in the game, but there's an alternative. You have rare veggie pizza, 40 condition duration and 70 condition damage, which is basically the same thing. So with this food I have 50% condition duration, 70% bleeding duration, and with 30 is exactly 100% bleeding duration, and with lingering curse we have broken the cap and we have also hit 133% bleeding duration, which is the absolute maximum that the necromancer can get. That, alongside the fact that we have 50 critical hit chance, and we know that every time we crit we apply extra bleeding, should get us to 25 stacks of bleeding. But it's not exactly the case, it's still not sufficient. So we look now at the sigils in the weapons. The sigil, superior sigil of earth, chance on critical to inflict bleeding for 5 seconds. This sigil stacks with bard precision, and you actually have a chance to apply 2 extra bleeds on critical hit. So if you hit with, let's say, grasping dead, instead of 3 bleeds you have a chance to apply 5 bleeds. The offhand sigil is superior sigil of corruption. Gain 10 condition damage each time you kill a foe. We no longer need any condition duration, we no longer need any precision. We have broken the cap of 100% bleeding duration, and we have reached the cap of 133% bleeding duration for the necromancer. So all that is left is going to more condition damage. And for the secondary set we have the staff with rabbit stats and superior sigil of geomancy inside. Inflict bleeding on nearby foes for 7 seconds when you swap to this weapon in combat. And this is important, every time you switch to staff you are moving towards your secondary goal, which is the support part, and we know that staff is more or less of a support weapon with regeneration, chill, poison, debuffs, moving conditions from allies to foes, fear, so you buy your allies a bit of time. So you need, when you switch, you need to not worry about your bleeding stacks going down. So when you switch you have 5 stacks with another 3 that can become 5, so that's basically 10 just for switching. So you have the opportunity to act as a support without your damage, without affecting your damage in any way. The last piece of the puzzle is Master Tuning Crystal. Gain condition damage equal to 6% of your toughness, gain condition damage equal to 4% of your vitality. And we have some vitality, and this 300 vitality that we got actually it counts towards the usage of this food. And 6% of our toughness, we have a lot of toughness. So the final stats are 1999 condition damage, 53% critical strike chance, 2564 armor, 21,372 health, around that, and 50% condition duration. And this is actually 133% bleeding duration because of the runes and traits. So I have spoken a lot about your secondary role, your primary role, and what this all means, but now that we move on to the DPS rotation and playstyle, you will understand a bit more about all of this and just how important it is. Once I reach the demonstration of the overall build's capabilities, you will see that your secondary role is really beneficial, and you can, I won't spoil the surprise, but you guys will be really impressed. So when it comes to the DPS rotation and playstyle, there really isn't too much to it. Basically you stack up on bleeds and that is all. Your single target damage isn't as important as your AoE capabilities and support capabilities. So if you want to fight something single target, just mess around a bit with it. Fear if you have to, Spectral Grasp, Tainted Shackles. It's not really a big deal. It's all about AoE sustain type damage and your secondary role, which is support. But in order to understand these, you first need to understand the spell Epidemic. First thing you need to know about the spell Epidemic is that you don't really need to be adding conditions to a target in order to spread them. As you can see, I haven't attacked the champion giant at all, and when I use the spell Epidemic, I have spread all the conditions on the giant on nearby enemies. One thing to note is that the Necromancer in my team is a hybrid build and the Mesmer isn't even condition related build. So everything that I spread on nearby targets actually uses my condition damage and my condition duration. So basically the conditions just have to be there and I will spread them. It's almost as if I steal the damage, but I'm just copying it and amplifying it using my own condition damage and condition duration. Also, another really important fact is, I don't know if you guys noticed, but I got burning and confusion on 5 nearby targets. So not only I'm using everything that is on the target without me being the source from which it came, but I also have in AoE burning and confusion. It just has to be there. I keep clicking the mobs so you guys can see. I actually have burning and confusion. When the patch that gave burning to the necromancers came out, a lot of necromancers were like, oh my god, we have burning, that's such a big deal. And I almost said back then, wait a minute, that's not such a big thing, we had burning before. And now you guys can see what I was referring to. You actually had burning even before. The burning just has to be on the target and you have it. You have it. You steal, you copy the damage using your own condition damage on your own condition duration.
And I'm not attacking the boss at all.
Updating now. Yep, very nice.
Yep. The second very important fact is that if you use 5 stacks of AoE bleeding on a group of mobs and you use Epidemic on one of the mobs, the other mobs around that mob that was epidemicked will now have 10 stacks of bleeding on them. So basically you do more AoE damage, you do sort of more AoE damage than single target damage by default. The third really important fact is that Epidemic hits 5 nearby targets. So if you do single target damage and then you Epidemic that, that means you now do condition type damage. You do condition damage to 6 targets, not 5. So basically you can AoE 6 targets, not 5. These are really cool facts, you have to admit, but you guys might not understand why I decided to showcase this. Well, I will do my best to demonstrate with a few scenarios why this is really important. So, I spoke a lot about the support role of the Necromancer, and now I'm going to try to simulate some scenarios in which you can basically understand. So, let's say we are in a group of 5 or 3 or 4 or whatever.
Yep.
And you're busy fighting something, one of your team members dies, and another team member is fighting something quite strong, such as a giant or a veteran or something. if you take the time to revive that downed person, you might think that you're losing DPS. You might think you don't have AoE DPS uptime. You might think you're falling behind. And in the past I have spoken a lot about DPS uptime, DPS uptime, DPS uptime, and the importance of it. I will leave an annotation here if you want to know more about DPS uptime and what it means. So I go and revive the person that got downed, and I can immediately join back the fight with just the push of a button. With just activating Epidemic, I basically almost don't lose any DPS uptime. And the way I support and I prevent the target from not dying completely actually heals me back. So if a target goes down and I go near that target and put Well of Dark and I fear the mobs away, the Well of Darkness is going to heal me and prevent the target that is down for taking further damage. And the fact that it heals me means that I can tank while I revive that person, while I rally that person. And when all is said and done, after the person is revived, or even if it's not, I can immediately choose to do damage just by pressing Epidemic. So these kind of scenarios are really important in the grand scheme of things. So now you can understand better what it means to have a secondary role as a support. So basically main role is AoE damage dealing, secondary role is support, and we have built towards that goal, and it works quite marvelous. And you will see soon enough some fractal runs that will really showcase the value of this kind of support. But before that, some math and statistics behind the build, and the answer to the question what is better, to have condition duration or condition damage. So now let's talk about what is more important, condition damage or condition duration. We know that we need 133% condition duration to be able to stack up to 25 stacks of bleeding on the target on your own. So we have 1999 condition damage and we want to get to 25 stacks. As you can see, we have 3550 DPS from 25 stacks of bleeding. So that is 3550 damage per second at our condition damage and at maximum stacks. The thing is, we are sort of capped when it comes to single target DPS. Even if we add burning to it, it won't go further than 4300 something, almost 4400, which is still lower than what the hybrid does, and much lower than what a glass cannon can do. But this is not about single target DPS, because if we epidemic this, that's basically times 6, because you add on 5 targets plus the original targets, that's times 6, so that's insane damage. But we get to that in a few seconds. So basically, if we have, for example, 20% less condition duration, bleeding duration, we will be able to stack about 20 stacks of bleeding. On average, it's more or less, it depends on various factors and various skills, but let's say an average of 20. At 20, our damage per second has dropped dramatically. So 20 stacks is 2840, 25 stacks is 3555, which is quite a lot of damage loss on single target, and if you amplify that times 6, that's even more and even greater damage loss. So let's see if we, for example, remove 200 condition damage. 200 condition damage. So that would be 1799. So if we remove 200 condition damage, our DPS doesn't drop that much. So let's remove another 200. That would be 5. Let's remove another 200. That would be 3. So if you lose about 20 condition duration, 20% bleeding duration, it's almost the equivalent of losing 600 condition damage. But there's a few tricks to this. There are spells that, such as Bloody's Power, that are almost all the time on the target. It doesn't scale exactly like this. It's like this for higher numbers, but once you reach to lower condition duration, lower condition damages, the difference is not that great because of the math formula that calculates raw condition damage, which, as you can see, takes into consideration not only your condition damage stat but also your level. So basically, condition duration gives a raw improvement and condition damage gives only a percentage of an improvement, because the raw damage that you do with conditions also takes into consideration your level. So condition duration is more important than condition damage. Now, with that being said, you have to take into consideration how many players are in your team, and if you don't overstack, if you don't overstack bleedings, because the number of stacks are still 25. So it doesn't matter that you have the ability to stack 25 stacks of bleeding on the target on your own. If there's another person that can stack exactly the same thing on the target, you will lose damage. You will basically lose damage. But in a conditionmancer build, that is not really a problem. If you are going to take 2 AoE bleeders in a team, that means you're going in a heavy AoE environment. And in a heavy AoE environment, there are 2 things. You need to kill your opponent and you need to not get killed yourself. And to not get killed yourself by so many mobs, you need to provide support, you need to provide weakness, you need to provide chilling, you need to provide fear, you need to provide AoE bleeding, so that you and the other AoE bleeder that is in the team live to actually do your damage. And we know that we need to stay in the fight for a longer period of time so that you get full benefit from all of the bleeding, all of the duration of the bleeding. So this is the full answer to what is more important, condition duration or condition damage. Condition duration is much more important than condition damage, no matter how you take it, but you need to take into consideration overstacking. Overstacking needs to be taken into consideration. So now that we have the answer to what is more important, condition duration or condition damage, we also realize how important support is in a team, and not only for not overstacking bleeds, but also from a single target DPS perspective, because your single target DPS is going to be kept at around 3550, 4300 tops if you renounce all your support, which is just retarded to do, but we get to that later. So your DPS is capped at 3550. All other characters in your team that are designed, are built to do more single target DPS than AoE DPS, are going to need DPS uptime. And you, with support, with regeneration, with weakness, with chilling, with blind, you can provide them. You can provide them with DPS uptime. And 1 second of your DPS uptime does not match 1 second of a glass cannon DPS uptime. So you renounce your own small single target DPS in favor for double, triple the single target DPS of another class that is in your team. So your support is really, really important. That also means that your single target DPS can be considered negligible. It's negligible because you don't do that much. It's negligible because you need to support, so other people that do much can do much more by having DPS uptime. And also, it does not matter, it really doesn't matter how much damage you do on a single target, because your epidemic doesn't need your single target DPS to do high damage. It really doesn't. You just press and watch the numbers fly. You really don't need to do your single target DPS. Your single target DPS is irrelevant. And some of you guys might remember, I said I'm changing the PvE meta for the conditionmancer, and he will not have burning for single target. I said that. He will not have burning for single target. But he has burning on AoE, and he has confusion on AoE, and has torment on AoE, and poison and chilling, and whatever else you want. He has it in AoE. So this is how you need to play. This is how you need to play. So now we move on to the survivability, to the sustain part of the build. We know we are a condition type AoE damage dealer, so basically a sustain type AoE damage dealer, and we need to be able to remain in combat for a longer period of time. So we need to have some sort of heal that is not necessarily passive, but sustained type of healing, a way in which we can sustain ourselves in combat. So this is done through siphoning. On screen it is displayed, as you can see, the 3 major traits that will guarantee life siphoning to you. Now let's go through the process of it a bit, because life siphoning is highly controversial. A lot of people seem to think that life siphoning is way too ridiculously small to be effective, to be used. It is sort of small, it is not enough when it comes to PvP, but when it comes to PvE there's some factors that you need to take into consideration. As you can see, each hit adds a bit of health and each crit adds a bit of health. But when it comes to AoEs, when it comes to hits that hit multiple opponents, your life siphoning grows exponentially. Basically you end up at 5 times the original value, even 10 times the original value if you crit, up to 10 times. So as you can see, sometimes you can even heal up to 445 health just from one AoE skill, and you have about 6 of them and you can cycle through them. So basically, on top of permanent AoE regeneration, you have quite a bit of sustain as it is. The thing is, on top of all the sustain you provide yourself, you can get various auras from other characters that are in your team. This is supposed to sustain you in combat. This is supposed to sustain you in combat and not make you immortal. So in PvE, if this kind of sustain would be any higher, there would be certain party compositions that would actually make you, the character, immortal. You would heal so much that there wouldn't be any form of damage that could bring you down. So life siphoning isn't quite understood by people at the moment. The only way life siphoning is effective is if you're a really tanky character, because if you get hit for like 10k every hit, your 445 health that you gain from life siphoning won't do much for you. But if you get hit like normal hits of 1000 to 2000 on a regular basis, you dodge, you have a self heal, and the siphoning compensates for the extra lack of HP that you have. So now you can finally see how everything comes together into one very beautiful, very elegant, and just the proof of concept. And now you can see the proof of concept. The build was designed to be a sustained fighter, and it is a sustained AoE fighter, both in terms of survivability and in terms of damage. There is nothing quite as beautiful as a build that comes together and functions the way it is designed to function. So as you can see in the video, the health that I am gaining just by placing down marks and AoE hits is quite large, and I don't even dodge that much, don't even go into dash route. You're not supposed to be tanking, but you're supposed to be a survivable AoE damage dealer, and I think I managed to do that quite effectively with this build, as you can see in the video. And of course you must never forget about Plague Form. Plague Form as well heals yourself every time you do damage. It's just insane healing, absolutely insane healing. Now we have finally reached my favorite part of this video, the demonstration of the overall build's capabilities. So what is really important in this part is the fact that we are doing Fractals 48 and also our group's HP. If you take a look on the left in the party UI, you will see that the HP doesn't go down too much. Another thing that you need to know is the fact that when I recorded this, I had with me my trusty Padawan Shin, and I didn't really knew the other people. I had a Guardian because I wanted line of warding and some reflects. I had an Elementalist because I wanted the lightning field and a bit of burning and some power type damage, and I thought that we will get a bit more burning and some confusions from an engineer, but turns out he will just be using a flamethrower. He thought it would be funny. I'm like, yeah, okay, go for it.
You know why?
So it's not really my dream team, but at the same time the people that I was playing with were quite good. Their personal skill level was quite high. So as you can see, the HP, our group's HP doesn't go down almost at all. And the mobs, they melt. This is Fractals 48 and we're making it look easy, and we don't even have a proper party composition. We don't have confusions, we don't have burning all the time. This could have been made a lot better. Shin is using the hybrid build, so his epidemic is not as strong as mine, but he compensates with AoE vulnerability, which not only helps the berserker elementalist, but also improves the damage that the NPCs do to the mobs. So with an even better party composition, we would actually have too much damage, to be honest. I don't know if you guys noticed, but sometimes I don't even have a chance to put too much bleeding on the target. I have to epidemic right away because the mobs simply melt. And our HP stays almost, we almost don't even take damage. And we don't even synchronize our CCs. The point was to synchronize lightning field with line of warding, with spectral wall for the fears, maybe some chilling, maybe some weakness, epidemic of course by me and Shin. But no, it works like this as well with pugs. Skilled pugs, mind you, but still pugs, and not a team composition that I originally wanted. This is such a joy to watch. I actually believe that if I had the proper party composition, we would do Fractals 80 without any problems. At one point I even got too overconfident and I started salvaging things from my inventory, and one of us got downed, but he got overconfident as well. He shouldn't have gone so far ahead. He shouldn't have gone past the reflection wall. But that doesn't matter. The thing is, people ask for more difficult content in PvE, people ask for more challenging content, and they don't even understand how to properly do AoE, how to properly form a team. They don't understand team compositions, they don't understand synergizing, they don't understand the value of support, they don't understand the value of condition damage. And it's really sad at times to see so many people agreeing to the fact that the best way to do fractals, the best way to do content is simply stack 4 warriors on top of each other and use 100 blades with time warp from a mass mod. While that might be possible, it's not really the same thing and it's not really recommended. There is a place and time for everything, and getting into AoE demanding fights without condition damage, without support, without CCs, without tanking, without healing, it's not my idea of a fun day. So I previously spoke about the Force Conditionmancer from a perspective in which it would imply that it would have burning. So the Force Conditionmancer is the Conditionmancer that has burning. So let's take a look at what that actually is. So we no longer go in blood magic or death magic for the survivability and support part. We go full offensive and go into spite. We go into spite so we can get dumbfire, which basically gives burning, can trigger once every 10 seconds, stays on the target for about 6-7 seconds. Thing is, we now have 300 power, which we never use, but we have the condition duration, which is always a nice thing to have. The traits are gain retaliation for 3 seconds when entering Death Shroud, spiteful marks deal 10% more damage, which is always useful, and of course the burning, the reason why we are in this trade path to begin with. We also have might when we are hit under 20% health, and 5% of the power is given as bonus healing. We don't have much power, so as you can see the minor traits don't really favor us, and the fact that we have power is that is why this build is forced. So we go into blood magic for full of life, and this time we go Mark of Evasion. We don't have the overtime sustain that a normal conditionmancer has, so we are going to be dodging a lot. So when we dodge, we need to turn that into both a defensive and offensive ability. When we dodge, we are basically close to invulnerable, so if we manage to get regeneration from that dodge, from Mark of Blood, basically we get regeneration and we apply further bleeding on target. Also, since you have condition duration here, you no longer need that much condition duration from gear, so you can use superior rune of the undead. Condition damage, toughness, and 5% of toughness becomes condition damage. And as you can see with this current setup, using the foods that are required out of a conditionmancer, we have 70% condition duration. With the traits we have 20 and another 33, which is basically 123% bleeding duration, 70% condition duration like I said, and close to 2100 condition damage. With blood is power 2444. The utilities remain more or less the same. The thing is you invested so much into this trait path just to get burning, so you can increase your single target DPS by a little bit, which in my opinion, like I explained, it's not really worth it. You give up on all the benefits from the blood trait line that may benefit your team and also give versatility and stuff, just so you can add burning yourself to the target, which is kind of not needed, because burning on single target in PvE does about 900 damage. PvE wise doesn't do that much damage on single target, and only excels when it comes to AoE when you epidemic. And as you saw, you don't need to put the condition on the target, you just have to epidemic it. So, you know, every time I make one of these videos, I say this is the last time I'm going to make something like this, and then I make another one, but this is getting too much. I worked quite a lot on this one. There were some complications. I had to remake it because the game changed when I was like 75% of it done, so I had to scratch everything that I did until then and start from the beginning. But yeah, this is everything you need to know about the conditionmancer. I hope you guys will really appreciate this one, because every time I say I'm not going to do another one, but then I see like 1,000 comments in the first day, and then I'm like, maybe I'll do another one. Now that this one is done, I'm going to take a small break, and then I'm going to release the World v World build, the SPVP build, and I plan on doing a World v World marathon live stream, like a week or 2 weeks of just constant World v World. I hope it's going to be a lot of fun. I also want to do that for some time now, because I like owning people, and my build will be able to own people, and I just want to enjoy myself. I am guessing you people would be interested to see something like that, Necromancer owning in World v World. It would be fun. This somewhere around here should be the link to Twitch and Facebook. On Facebook I will be promoting, I kept saying that, but I actually will be promoting visual and audio artists. More visuals, because the audio artists I will be making separate playlists on my channel on YouTube. The purpose of this is slowly moving towards a long-term project that I'm trying to make. So regarding that, if you know any really talented visual artists that are willing to collaborate for a long time project, don't hesitate to let me know. So if you have any questions, put them in the comment section below. I will get to them eventually. I also might be leaving the country at the end of the month. I will stay maximum for a week, but don't worry, I will be back and I will be making content. I also plan on releasing a new support build for the Necromancer. Is going to be really amazing. It changes a lot of things about the PvE meta, and yeah, that's about it, I think. So now I'm going to do something very relaxing. But until next time, enjoy your gaming and have a great day.